First, a reminder that FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels a lot different. That was what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you with FanDuel. And with that, Brian Hoyer, former NFL quarterback, Lakewood native, joins the show. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm great. How are you guys?
I'm feeling old knowing that you're 40 years old now, Brian. It's kind of...
Oh, man, don't remind me. That just happened a few weeks ago. Please don't remind me of that. I still feel like I'm 28.
Wait, I'm going to remind you, because what did you do to celebrate? Did you have a big get-together or something? What'd you do?
No, I actually did something I've wanted to do for a long time. Wasn't able to. I was planning. I went to Germany, went to Oktoberfest. So whole family went, full lederhosen. I'm a dual citizen on my dad's side, so have waited to do that for a long time. So it was probably the best 40th birthday I could ask for.
You know, Brian, it's weird. This is the first time I had an opportunity to ever talk to your interviewer. I said that the Cleveland Browns quarterback job is one of the most difficult jobs in the entire universe. Just being a Cleveland Browns quarterback, I kind of almost compare it to even with the Cowboys or the Packers or some other teams with rabid fan bases, because we are looking for King Arthur and somebody to take Excalibur out of the rock. It's like, what does it feel like to have the pressure and some of the things, because you went through it with Manziel, you went through it in some of the things that we see with Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders and Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson. How difficult is it to be a Cleveland Browns quarterback and then to kind of block out the noise?
Yeah, I mean, look, and you just mentioned my age. So I grew up watching Bernie Kosar, and thankfully he's doing better. And, I've been praying and thinking about Bernie through his journey. And when I was a kid growing up, I put on that 19 jersey and went out in the backyard and played. And just like weather that they played in yesterday, right? That was like, those were the days you wanted to go out and play football in the backyard. And so for me, it was a unique experience because it was something, everybody as a kid dreams of playing professional sports. Well, you dream of doing it for your hometown team. And I got that opportunity. And unfortunately, the first year I was doing it, it was taken away from me by that knee injury. And then you go and battle back and obviously have to deal with, trying to retain your job and hold off Johnny. And, it didn't work out. And it becomes tough because you're right. They're looking for the answer. And how many names is it now? 42 names on that jersey. Mine's smack dab right in the middle. Yeah. And it's hard because it's not always just about the quarterback, right? It's about the team that's around them. Yeah. It's about the coaching staff, the players, the management, the ownership. All of those things factor into quarterback success. And unfortunately, they just haven't been able to have sustained success long enough to let a guy kind of win the job, keep it, progress, mature, all of those things. And so it's look, they're going to keep having to search it until they find it. And so right now I'd give Shedeur the rest of the season, because you got to know what you have in this guy before you get to the off season. And so, it's to me, being a Cleveland native, look, I played for 9 different teams, more for the Patriots than any other team, but I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I played for the Browns. I want to see the Browns do well. And until you can solidify that position, you're always going to be searching.
Brian, you just hit on it, and I've been saying for 2 weeks, eventually they have to let Shedeur play quarterback, because to me, he's not playing quarterback yet. And it's a lot of screens, it's a lot of quick game. They're not trusting him to make calls. They're not trusting him to set protections, change plays to the line of scrimmage, stand in the pocket and throw the ball down the field and make tight windows. All that stuff that good NFL quarterbacks have to do. Am I off on that? Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing, that there are so many seatbelts and guardrails? It feels like, I don't know if they're trying to protect him or they don't trust him yet to actually play quarterback in the NFL.
I mean, it could be a multitude of things, right? I think when I watched that game yesterday, the run game was working. And so, I thought giving the ball to Judkins was beneficial. You're right. There was a lot of screen passes. I thought the best play of the day, obviously, was the touchdown. You see it right there on the chart. And to me, having studied Shedeur coming out into the draft, the one thing that I thought he was going to have to improve on was not running out of the back of the pocket. Well, on that touchdown pass, he did a tremendous job, stepped up. It was a great play design. They kind of knew it was cover 4. carry the corner and the safety out with the post. Fannin, who I think is a phenomenal player, did a great job selling, like he's running the little stop route and then turned it up the sideline. And Shedeur did a great job, and there was time for him to step up. But some of the other times you see him and he drops back, and it's like he's holding the ball. And really, I look back at it, there wasn't a lot of people open either. So I'm not going to blame Shedeur for that. But, at this point now, you see a lot of – and I thought they did a good job of getting him outside the pocket, moving the pocket and doing those things. But – and I wasn't there yesterday. You hear about the weather on the TV broadcast, so maybe that had something to do with it. But you're right. Look, the reality is you got to take the training wheels off. What is there, 5 weeks left in this season, and let him play quarterback. Let him throw it 35, 40 times a game if need be, and see what you have in him. Because the reality is when you go into this offseason, look, they traded back. They accumulated draft picks. There's going to be a few other teams that are looking for quarterbacks too, and you have to know, what you have in Shedeur. I think you've seen enough of Dillon Gabriel to understand where he's at. So I think this is a great opportunity for them to play Shedeur. Like you said, don't hold anything back. But I do think, he will benefit from having a good run game. You don't want to put this whole game on his shoulders. So it's a balance.
Ryan, having to deal with the Johnny Manziel situation. And I don't want to compare Shedeur to Johnny because Johnny was a clown, and that's me saying it, not you. But whereas Shedeur's not doing anything like that, but there's a hype around Shedeur that there, in a way, was like same as Johnny, same as Tim Tebow too. And maybe Tim Tebow's the better comparison for Shedeur because Tim Tebow didn't do anything wrong either. But there was a lot of stuff with him. How distracting is that for the team when that's going on?
Yeah, it can be, and I think the one thing, that's not Shedeur's fault. Okay,
right.
Let's just be clear here. That Shedeur was who he was. Whoever decided, which I know it's been debated, to go ahead and draft him in the 5th round after they had already drafted Dillon Gabriel, they're getting exactly what they asked for. Okay, that's the reality. And then you go back to like the pressure and all of those things. Do you think it made Joe Flacco's job easier to have Shedeur? Do you think that it made Dillon Gabriel's job easier to have Shedeur back there? No, and like I said, that's not Shedeur's fault. Let me be very clear about that. The same way that it wasn't Johnny Manziel's fault that that the storyline was always about Johnny. That's who he is. The Browns organization, whoever was responsible for drafting these guys, those are who were responsible. So you know what you're going to get. And so I would say, does it become a distraction for a team? Only the team will know that. And I think, we can all sit here and judge Shedeur and how he acts and all of those things. And really all that matters is what the guys in the building and most specifically in the locker room think of him. And if they're good with who he is, then that's all that matters. He shouldn't even have to address other people questioning his personality. Look, when the Browns left, I don't know about you guys, but I rooted for players, and Dillon Sanders was my favorite player as a kid. Yep. And so you have to remember, Shedeur grew up around the game. Shedeur grew up around prime time. That's what he knows. So I don't think that he should apologize for who he is. That's who he is. And I think people, instead of making a big controversy out of it, just accept it for what it is and realize none of this is Shedeur's fault, okay? The team that drafted Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round and then decided to draft Shedeur afterwards to throw that monkey wrench in the solution, like that made it harder for everyone involved because what is the first question everyone wants to ask about? Where's Shedeur? When's he going to get to play? And so it's hard enough as it is to play quarterback in this league as opposed to when you have a guy who's a lightning rod and not in a bad sense, it is what it is, to be in your locker room. So they have put themselves in this situation. Shedeur didn't put himself in this situation. Shedeur is Shedeur, and I think we all just need to accept him for who he is.
Which is why, Brian, I've made the point the last couple of weeks. To me, either he's the starter on this team next year or he's somewhere else because you can't do this again. You can't do this again with another quarterback. And it's every week the constant questions, all this crap about sabotage and everything else. This is not healthy for a high-functioning franchise, and the Browns have never been a high-functioning franchise. So it's pretty cut and dry to me. Either you commit to him, you see what he's got the last 5 weeks, and you commit to him next year as your starting quarterback, or else you move on from him.
Yeah, I agree with the part of committing to him for the next 5 weeks and seeing what you're going to get. Now, it would take – he would have to play. He would have to have like a Jimmy Garoppolo-esque when Jimmy first got to San Francisco, 5-game streak for you to basically say, we're good. We're not going to draft like a Fernando Mendoza or a Ty Simpson, whoever emerges. I haven't gotten that far down the line of studying these guys in college. But Shedeur, you're right, would have to get the next stretch of games, you'd have to take the training wheels off. You'd have to let him just be out there, be the player that he is, and he would have to knock your socks off to basically be put in that situation. And I think, look, that's the dynamic, and none of us have to deal with that. The organization has to deal with that. How are you going to deal with the fallout if it doesn't work out? If he's not playing well, are you going to move on from this guy after only 1 year? And so who knows who will be even making those decisions? Is it Jimmy Haslam? Is it Andrew Berry? Is Stefanski still there? And so you made a good point. Like, stable organizations don't do this. And somehow you have to figure out a way to stabilize that organization. And it's going to start with making this decision, because it's the most important decision in all of sports, is who's playing quarterback.
Yeah.
Brian, what would you say? I look at this team, two of the glaring weaknesses that I look at is wide receiver, offensive line. Selfishly, as a quarterback, what would you take? An elite offensive lineman or an elite receiver? Which one makes your life better for you?
Man, that's a tough question. But you know what? The thing that I would say, and this is like just from experience, in New England, when we were successful, I would say we always had an elite offensive line unit. We didn't always have, we weren't like Cincinnati that had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Now, we had Gronkowski, we had Edelman. But the reality is, it doesn't matter how good your receivers or tight ends are if you don't have time to throw the football. And a lot of that is game planning and the coaches and how they design things. But man, I would say, and for example, let's look at the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams. What did they do? They invested in a lot of pieces around him, but they invested heavily in the offensive line, right? They go out and they trade for Joe Thuney, they signed Dahlman. Like, I think Ben Johnson has an understanding of, it doesn't matter how many weapons we have on the outside. If we can't protect this kid, then it's really not going to make a difference. And so for me, if you're the Cleveland Browns, I think first and foremost, you try to invest and build in that unit. That doesn't mean every guy has to be a first round draft pick. You can easily attract offensive linemen in free agency or trade market. And then I would think you would go and try to accumulate talent on the outside through the draft, and obviously you can do that as well through free agency. But man, I think I'd have to side with my offensive lineman here, because it makes it so much easier when you can have time to throw the football, and if the plays are designed well enough, then you go through the reads and you have time to maybe get to your third progression because your first two guys weren't open. So I think I'm going to have to go offensive line.
Brian, whenever there's a sack, fans always blame the offensive line, which in some cases, obviously, but sometimes it's the quarterback's fault, right? I mean,
yep.
I know you were a quarterback, but what percentage of the time would you say, ballpark, it's the quarterback's fault when there's a sack?
Well, I would throw in the skill guys as well. And,
sure.
And I heard you guys talking before I got on and making sure you're on the right page. Is it cover 3? Is it cover 2? I mean, I can think back to a handful of sacks where, I'm expecting the receiver to break out. He turns in, you pull the ball down, boom, you're sacked. And so look, the beauty of football and the beauty of offensive football as opposed to defensive football, you need 11 guys to do the right thing on a play to be successful. And that success could be an 8-yard completion. Okay. Mm-hmm. On defense, if one guy messes up or falls down, but he's away from the play, you kind of don't notice it. And so that's the one thing I would say offensively, it takes all 11 guys to do their job. And so, I mean, it's hard for me to put a percentage on it.
Sure.
I'd be willing to say 50-50. It's not always the offensive line. There's times at the quarterback, you may not start your read in the right place. Or as I mentioned before, you go to throw the pass and all of a sudden your receiver slips or he doesn't run the right route and now you got to pull it down. And so I don't think it's fair to say, even higher than 50% that it's on the offensive line. I think it can go to the play caller. Like, when I was here when the Browns played the Patriots, I was here in the game. I mean, Look, everybody's going to struggle against Myles Garrett. They're trying to chip him, do everything. I mean, that guy is a freak. And so sometimes, you may have – I think we could all agree Trent Williams, probably one of the best left tackles in the game. Mm-hmm. What he did to Trent Williams yesterday, I mean, thank God I'm not still playing and having to go against a guy like this. Because someone that big should not move that quick, that fast. I mean, Trent Williams rarely gets made – to look like a fool, and Myles Garrett did it with such ease. So it's all encompassing. I would say it's easily 50-50. And the biggest thing that I learned throughout my career, you have to have an internal clock. You have to have an understanding of the play. Is this play designed to be a curl flat and I'm going to take 5-step drop and get to my second hitch and get rid of the ball? Is it going to be a shot play and take a shot? Like when the Patriots played the Browns, they hit that shot to Booty on the left side. They waited till Myles Garrett was out of the game. And so that's Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, basically having a sheet on his a section on his call sheet, plays when Myles Garrett's out. Someone tells him in the helmet, Myles Garrett's not in the game. He goes immediately to that play. It's a touchdown. So it's really, that's the beauty of football, is it takes everybody to be on the same page and do the right thing.
All right, Brian, I'm glad I get to ask you this question because you played with half of this group. So more impressive, this month stretch that Myles Garrett has had where he has 14 sacks in 5 games or whatever, or Josh Gordon, that 4-game stretch with you guys where he had about 800 yards and 6 touchdowns in 4 weeks?
Man, I'm going to say Josh Gordon because that takes a lot of people to be involved to be able to get that done. The quarterback, the offensive line, just like we just talked about, him catching the ball. I mean, Myles, you just put him out there. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he breaks the record in the next 2 weeks. He's just he's so good. And even knowing getting double teams and things like that, he's truly incredible. But I would say, he doesn't have to rely on anyone else to get that done. Whereas Josh, with multiple quarterbacks, the offensive line's got to protect, and it takes more people to accomplish that. Myles, you just put him out there, even against the best left tackle in the league, and he's still going to get his.
Could Josh have been a Hall of Famer if things had played out differently off the field?
Yeah. No, look, I mean, and I got to play with Josh here again in New England, and one of the most talented players of all time that I've ever played with was Josh Gordon. And so always just wishing him well. And I saw that he was on the podcast with Johnny recently. So, but yeah, definitely. Look, my first start that year was Josh's first game back. And I think all you need to do is go back and look up the statistics. I think I targeted him like 14 times. So that's all you need to know about.
Smart move.
When I got the chance to play with Josh.
Man, you know what? So this is a unique opportunity because you did say you played most of your career with the Patriots. And the Patriots during those time periods are always known as a team that was button up, special teams, didn't hurt themselves. And obviously the Cleveland Browns for a long time have been known as a team, not so special teams, penalties, you know what it is. You've been in both places. Can you articulate what is the difference between teams that traditionally don't hurt themselves, are solid special teams, and teams that for whatever reason seemingly can't get out of their own way? Is it a mentality? Is it a culture? Culture means a lot of stuff. But what would you say is the difference between those teams and other teams?
Yeah, I mean, 2 things immediately come to my mind. One, and this may look, Cleveland, Bill Belichick was the last coach there before they left to go to Baltimore, and I got the opportunity to play with him. And one of the greatest things I ever took away from him was he would have this quote, and he would say, "You can't win until you keep from losing." Mm-hmm. And you think about that, and you hit it right on the head. Like I look at that game yesterday for the Browns against the 49ers. You fumble it on 4th and 1 with Fannin playing quarterback. You have the muff punt, which, by the way, every time I look at number 84 for the Browns, all I can think of is Webster Slaughter. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yeah.
But Bill, that was the standard. You cannot win until you keep from losing, and we practice that way. Look, if you fumbled a snap in practice, you were taking a lap in front of the whole team. If you jumped off sides, you were taking a lap. It was accountability to the highest level. And then what happened was over years, because they had such continuity, the players enforced that. And I would say, the teams that I've been on that are successful, the culture is enforced by the players, not by the coaches. The coaches set the culture a long time before I ever got in New England. And when I got there, obviously, the greatest player of all time, Tom Brady, but guys like Matt Light and Kevin Falk and Teddy Bruschi, guys who maybe weren't as heralded as Tom Brady, those guys set the standard. And if you didn't meet the standard, they were going to let you know about it. And so it's one of those, it's a catch-22, right? The coach has to be able to install it and be there long enough to have players that enforce it. And I'll say this, I played for 9 different teams. The level of intensity and the level of accountability and expectations on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in New England were never matched anywhere else I was. If things didn't go well in New England, we would start the entire practice over. It didn't matter if you were, halfway through. I was in other places, it was not a great practice. People were like, we'll figure it out later. We'll fix it. Like, it doesn't get fixed. Okay. And so the one thing that I would say about New England, as opposed to every other place I was Bill set the tone and the players enforced it. And the standard never wavered. That's the biggest thing. And so it's kind of like you have to have the coach who can do it and then get it going. And then you have to have the players that can get it going as well. And, when you have a head coach and a quarterback for 20 plus years, it's pretty easy to do.
Brian, last thing. I'll never forget, you beat the Bengals on Thursday Night Football in 2014. You guys improved to 6-4 after that
First
win.
First place.
I thought it was
remember
7-4.
No, they lost the next game, then they won the game after that, I think against Atlanta to go to 7-5. But I remember after that Bengals, when I got on the air that night on the radio, I said the Browns are going to the playoffs, lock it in. Now, obviously that didn't happen, but here's the question I've been waiting over a decade to ask you. It was a great season. I want your thoughts in general on how fun that season was, at least for the first 3 quarters. But do you believe, or do you know, I don't even know if you want to say, that, because I've been convinced for years that Mike Pettine had his hand forced to bench you. I can't believe that he wanted to bench you. I think his hand was forced by the front office, ownership, whatever, to put Johnny Manziel in there. What say you?
Yeah, it was a tremendous year. And you want to talk about the highs and lows of the NFL. You talk about that Thursday night game. We go down, we whooped Cincinnati's butt. Yep. And I just mentioned my favorite player as a kid was Dillon Sanders. So Thursday Night Football, I get up on stage. I'm in front of the crowd. I'm doing the interview. And to my left is Dillon. And you know what he said? I don't know if you remember this. Man,
yes.
The Browns need to pay this man. They need to pay. And I was like, this is incredible. This is like the greatest moment of my life, other than the marriage, marrying my wife and the birth of my kids. And 3 weeks later, I was benched. And so, look, I will just say this. When I went to go meet with Coach Pettine, I went up there and he said, look, I've been fighting this battle for a long time. Okay. He's like, there's nothing you could have really done about it. And self-admittedly, I played poorly for a 2 or 3 week stretch. Yeah. So, that led me to believe there was forces above him and look, this is not a secret, right? Ray Farmer was fined or whatever for texting from the booth. Like that's what I said earlier. It's very hard to play this position. It's hard when people who don't really know what's going on in the meetings, at practice, they want to have their hand in who's playing the game. So whether it was the marketing, whether it was the front office, look, there's a reason Kyle Shanahan went in after that season and asked to be released. Okay, yeah. So you guys can put those pieces together. I wish it would have worked out. It would have been. Look, it would have made my life and my family's life a lot easier to just stay in Cleveland, right? But I'm thankful for the way my career went. I'm thankful that I had that opportunity. I'll never forget, running in the tunnel after those home games when we won, and that was, fulfilling a childhood dream. So it was great while it lasted. And like I said, I'm a Northeast Ohio kid. I always want the Browns to do well.
Hey, real quick, out of all of the Browns coaches that have been through here, Mike was the one guy that I thought, he probably had a chance. He could probably have been a pretty decent head coach.
I agree.
I think he was so broken and has so much PTSD from his time here, he never wants to do it again. But I'm just wondering, could he have been a solid NFL head coach? I know I'm putting you on the spot. It's not like you're going to say. It's not like you're going to say, God, no, he was terrible. But he was the one guy that I thought, man, I really thought I liked him, and I thought he had a chance.
And I'll tell this backstory, and I think I told it when he got hired. But when I tore my ACL against the Bills, Pett was the defensive coordinator of the Bills. And so, we win that game. I'm doing my rehab, and you go and, I got a piece of mail at the facility, and it had a Buffalo Bills logo. And I opened up, and it was this handwritten letter from Mike Pettine saying, hey, I'm sorry you got hurt. I wish you a speedy recovery. You were playing so well. It was tough to prepare for you. Fast forward a year later, he's the head coach, and things were going pretty well. And I think we were talented. I would say that year losing Alex Mack was very detrimental to the success of our offense, because that system really needed a solid center. He made all the calls, the running game, and finally the teams realized we couldn't run the football anymore. And so the play action and the explosive, the boots and all that stuff kind of ran dry. But I think had Pettine and Kyle stayed, whether it was me there or not. I think with the right situation, the right quarterback. I mean, we've seen what Kyle's done since he left Cleveland, right? I think that combination could have definitely got the Browns to the playoffs. I'm sure Kyle would have left at some point to be a head coach, but no, I always loved Coach Pettine. It was great. Obviously he was a first-time head coach, and I think he there's that famous clip of, he's telling Kyle to run it, and Kyle looks at him. He's like, "All right, run your best play." And it was this pass
right.
play. He kind of, it was in a way Kyle was the head coach of the offense, and Pet was in. Look, we had a lot of great. Jeff Hafley was on that staff, right? Bobby Babbage got a lot of guys who went on to do great things in the NFL. So it definitely would have been interesting to see if we had gotten to year 2 how that would have went.
Yeah.
Brian, you've always been a complete class act, a total pro. You represent your hometown in this area so well, even when knuckleheads like me are screaming and yelling, "You got to be better, you got to do this." Thank you for taking the time today. We appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.